Namaskar. Myself Upasana Sharma, a PhD research scholar in the Department of Sanskrit, Guwahati University. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the sixth day of the year-long lecture series on Indian knowledge system organized by Guwahati University through online mode. We are honored to have with us our esteemed resource person, Professor Diganta Vishwa Sharma sir, Professor of Practice, Dibrugarh University. Sir is also a recipient of the prestigious Sahitya Academy Translation Award and widely recognized as a motivational speaker. He is also a devoted scholar of Sri Aurobindo's teachings. We are truly fortunate that he has graciously agreed to dedicate his time to guide us throughout a year with his profound knowledge and insights into the rich heritage of Indian knowledge system. On behalf of the organizing team, I welcome our respected resource person to deliver today's speech. I extend my warmest welcome to all the participants present in the session today. We hope this session will be enriching and enlightening for all of us. Without further ado, I now hand over the session to our respected resource person, Professor Diganta Vishwa Sarma sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you and welcome to sixth session of Indian Knowledge System, a year-long lecture series consisting of 100 sessions organized by Guwahati University through the lens of Sri Aurobindo. And yesterday we did start our discussion on knowledge of the phrase Indian knowledge system. And we discussed knowledge in the context of information, knowledge, and wisdom. In the context of information, knowledge, and wisdom. So it is widely acknowledged. We acknowledge very often that there is a distinction between information and knowledge. First, I am recapping. But what is precisely that distinction? What is the precise distinction between information and knowledge? For knowledge consists of any article. For knowledge consists of any article that is presented to our awareness. Presented to our awareness means presented to our consciousness. Any article that is presented to our awareness and which is grasped as such. For instance, somebody has shown me a river and he calls it river. So the fact is being presented to my awareness. The fact is being presented to my consciousness. And I have grasped it as such. This is not knowledge. This is mere information. This is not knowledge. This is mere information. Then what is knowledge? While knowledge implies, and I am taking all these takes from the writings of late Professor Kirit Joshi. While knowledge implies awareness of facts, not one fact, not one article. While knowledge implies awareness of facts, in their interrelationship, facts in their interrelationship, in their context, in their significance, as well as in their meaning, as also plus intellectual and critical reflection thereon, then that will be knowledge. So, any article presented to my consciousness, presented to my awareness, and grasped as such by me is mere information for me. But knowledge implies awareness of facts, or facts being presented to my consciousness or presented to my awareness Facts, it is plural number, facts. Facts presented to my awareness, presented to my consciousness in their interrelation, in their interrelationship, in their context, in their significance, and also their meaning. So when somebody is showing me a river and a hill, but river and hill are being presented to my consciousness in their interrelationship, in their significance, in their meaning, in their context. And there is also intellectual and critical reflection thereon. Then that will be knowledge. Otherwise, mere presentation of facts is only information. So this is the difference between information and knowledge. I do not know, or I am not aware whether somebody else has ever attempted to distinguish between information and knowledge. But I have found this. I have found this from late Professor Kirit Joshi's book, A National Agenda for Education. A National Agenda for Education. So this is definition of information and knowledge. But in Indian tradition, in the context of Indian knowledge system, knowledge means another thing. This is this ordinary sense of knowledge. But there is a peculiar meaning of knowledge, peculiar sense of knowledge in Indian tradition. Though I will not be discussing today, even India recognizes four orders of knowledge, fourfold orders of knowledge. Right now, we are attaining knowledge. By three means. Right now, we are attaining knowledge, or knowledge is being attained by our senses. Knowledge is being attained by our reasoning, and knowledge is being attained by our intellectual thought. So far, we do not know other way of knowledge. We do not know. Indian knowledge system, India knew another three ways, another three orders of knowledge. Altogether, there are fourfold ways, or fourfold methods, or fourfold orders of knowledge. So today I will not be discussing, but I will surely discuss all these four categories, or fourfold orders of knowledge at an appropriate stage of our lecture series. But what they are, one is called knowledge by identity. First one is knowledge by identity. But identity with what? Identity means unity, unification. Knowledge by identity. Identity with what? Identity with the object of knowledge. You are subject of the knowledge. I am subject of the knowledge. Bihoi and Bihoi. I am Bihoi. And more Gyanor Bihoi hol Pahar ba Gyanor Bihoi Padartho Bigyan, Rakhayan Bigyan, Sanskrit Sahitya, Asamiya Sahitya. So I am subject, and there is an object of knowledge. So knowledge by identity. It is the first order of the fourfold orders of knowledge. And second, and this classification I am telling you straight from the life divine. Straight from the life divine. It is Maharishi's classification. And the second one, he has classified as knowledge by intimate direct contact. Knowledge by intimate direct contact. Second order. Third one is separative direct knowledge. Knowledge by separative direct knowledge. And the last one is wholly separative by indirect contact. So there are fourfold orders of knowledge. Knowledge by identity, knowledge by intimate direct contact, then separative direct contact, knowledge by separative direct contact, and the last one is wholly separative knowledge by indirect contact. The knowledge which is attained by senses, knowledge which is attained by reasoning, knowledge which is attained by intellectual thought, is the separative knowledge, wholly separative knowledge by indirect contact. It will be discussed. These fourfold orders of knowledge will be discussed. Apart from these fourfold orders of knowledge, in Indian tradition, we have a very precise and altogether different meaning of knowledge in Indian tradition. And for that matter, so far the Indian knowledge system is concerned, the word knowledge applies to a state. State of what? State of definitely consciousness. State of consciousness, state of our being. There are many states of our being. There are mental consciousness, higher mental consciousness, illumined mental consciousness, intuitive mental consciousness, then overmind consciousness. So there are lots of states of being. We are not composed of one single state of being. We can rise to higher and higher states of being. So knowledge implies to a state. What kind of state? That lies beyond the intellectual activity of the mind. That lies beyond the intellectual activity of the mind. So we have now got three distinct connotations. One definition for information, another for knowledge, which is grasped in their interrelationship, in their context, in their meaning, in their significance, and knowledge as a state that lies beyond the intellectual activity of the mind. Last is the sense of knowledge in Indian tradition. Though India also recognizes the wholly separative knowledge by indirect contact. That is to say, knowledge attained by senses, knowledge attained by reasoning, knowledge attained by intellectual thought. This is the fourth order of knowledge. So, first in Indian tradition, knowledge implies a state that lies beyond the intellectual activity of the mind. When knowledge is a state that lies beyond the intellectual activity of a mind, is it not a growth of our being to a higher state? So then knowledge is called a luminous growth. Knowledge implying a state that lies beyond the intellectual activity of the mind means knowledge a luminous growth. Luminous growth into the higher states of being. So second sense we now get is the knowledge is a luminous growth. Growth into what? Growth into higher states of being. Higher state of being. So all are corollary. So knowledge implies a state that lies beyond intellectual activity of the mind, means knowledge is a luminous growth into the higher state of being. By what? By the outshining of the light of the integral reality. And integral reality, yesterday I discussed to an extent that integral reality means reality is omnipresent, reality is within me, reality is transcendental, reality is universal, reality is also individual, reality is also within me. So by the outshining of the light of the integral reality. So we now got the second sense of knowledge. Knowledge as a luminous growth into higher states of being, not definitely lower states of being, higher states of being. Then there is another sense. What is knowledge in Indian tradition? Knowledge is a light. Knowledge is a light. Not only intellectual grasping, not only intellectual reflection or intellectual or critical reflection, but knowledge is a light. And what is the function of light? Light leads us. Light leads us. So, if knowledge is light, if knowledge is luminous growth, if knowledge is a state that lies beyond the intellectual activity of the mind, then knowledge is a light. Then knowledge is a light. Asatu ma sadgamaya, tamasu ma jyotirgamaya. Tamasu ma jyotirgamaya. Mrittur ma amritam gamaya. All this, our journey towards higher states of being. So knowledge is the light by which we grow into our true being. So knowledge is a luminous growth into the higher states of being. Knowledge will also lead us to our true being. Then is the present being not my true being? Yes, definitely. India says the whole surface being of myself is not my true being. It is instrumental being. This outer mind, life, and body are not being, they are instrument. Whose instrument? Instrument of my individual soul. Upanishad says Atmartham, for the sake of soul, Atmartham. So, knowledge is a light by which we grow into our true being. Because we are to proceed to asatu ma sadgamaya, tamasu ma jyotirgamaya, mrittur ma amritam gamaya. So by which we grow into our true being, but not that knowledge by which we increase our information and our intellectual riches. So this is knowledge by indirect contact, separative knowledge by indirect contact. Why it is called separative? Because there is no identity with the object of knowledge. When I am studying physics, I have not unified myself. I have not unified my consciousness with physics. So object and subject of knowledge are separated. And it is knowledge by senses, knowledge by intellectual thought, and knowledge by reasoning. Knowledge which increases our information and intellectual riches. With this knowledge, we cannot grow into our true being. The knowledge which is a state that lies beyond the intellectual activity of the mind. That light which is a luminous growth to higher states of being is also a light that can lead me to my true being, or by which we grow into our true being. So this is the very preliminary sense of the very word knowledge in Indian tradition. Knowledge is a state that lies beyond the intellectual activity of the mind. Knowledge, a luminous growth into what? Into the higher states of being, ascension. And another is, knowledge is a light that by which we grow into our true being, inward. One is upward, one is inward. But then Indian traditions also admits that there are different kinds of knowledge. This is the knowledge in the profounder Indian sense. Because India has already recognized fourfold orders of knowledge. There is not one order of knowledge. There are fourfold orders of knowledge. So Indian tradition admits that there are different kinds of knowledge, definitely. And what are those? As for example, scientific knowledge, psychological knowledge, philosophical knowledge, ethical knowledge, aesthetic knowledge, worldly knowledge, practical knowledge. But this knowledge does not help me to grow in the being, to grow in the true being. But this kind of knowledge also help me to grow, but in the becoming, in the world, in the manifestation, in the sambhuti, in the abhivakti. Becoming means abhivakti. Whose abhivakti? Divine's abhivakti, divine self-expression. Sambhuti, this manifestation is called becoming. And who is being? The supreme being, the ultimate reality, the Brahman, the Atman, the Purusha. So, Indian tradition admits that there are different kinds of knowledge, different kinds of knowledge. And we have also given few examples of those different kinds of knowledge. Next issue is, it is emphasized that these forms of knowledge also help us to grow. I have already explained. They help us to grow in the world. They help us to grow in the manifestation. But they do not help us to grow into our true being. Those knowledge are not luminous growth into higher states of being. Those knowledge are not arriving at a state that lies beyond intellectual activity of the mind. But they are still knowledge, because India recognizes fourfold orders of knowledge. Wholly separative knowledge by indirect contact. So, this is another thing about knowledge, about the other kinds of knowledge, not the knowledge in the profounder sense, not the knowledge in the profounder Indian sense, but worldly knowledge can be aids to our real knowledge. India admits that fact also. Even worldly knowledge, knowledge of physics, chemistry, mathematics, can be our aids to real knowledge. That is to say, knowledge as a state, knowledge as a luminous growth, knowledge as a light. So, Kirit Joshi writes, it is further underlined that these forms of knowledge, that is to say, the knowledge, the scientific knowledge, psychological knowledge, philosophical knowledge, ethical knowledge, aesthetic knowledge, worldly knowledge, practical knowledge, can also be used as aids to real knowledge. So knowledge as a light, knowledge as a luminous growth, to acquire or to evoke those knowledge, this kind of knowledge, separative knowledge by indirect contact, can also help us. So it is further underlined that these forms of knowledge too can be used as aids to real knowledge. But the real knowledge is that which is secret to the mind. That is another important thing. Real knowledge is secret to mind. Mind does not possess the real knowledge. Mind is only a seeker of the truth. Mind is only a seeker of the knowledge. But mind is not the possessor of the truth. Mind is not the possessor or the reservoir of knowledge. Then what is the reservoir and what is the source of knowledge? Surely your soul is the source of knowledge. So this is another thing, of which mind only gets reflection. So mind gets only reflection of the real knowledge, only reflection, but which lives in the spirit. But real knowledge lives in the spirit, in the soul. So about worldly knowledge, practical knowledge, psychological knowledge. So there are so many characteristics. First thing is that this type of knowledge also help us to grow, but not in the being, but in the world, in the becoming, in the sambhuti, in the manifestation, in the abhivakti, in the in the self-expression of this divine, that is to say, in this phenomenal creation. First thing. Second thing, but this knowledge can be used as aids to real knowledge. This is the second fact. But real knowledge is secret to mind. Mind does not know about, mind does not any hold about the real knowledge. Mind is not the possessor. Mind is not the source of real knowledge. This is another fact about worldly knowledge. Then mind gets only the reflection. And true knowledge belongs to the spirit. True knowledge belongs to the soul. True knowledge lives in the soul. True knowledge lives in the spirit. And that is why my external being is not the real being. It is the instrumental being. Instrumental being. Whose instrument? Upanishad says Atmartham. Instrument of our soul. Then we have so far discussed about knowledge and information. Then what is wisdom? Definitely wisdom is a becoming. Wisdom is a new birth. Wisdom is a new consciousness. Wisdom is a new nature. Because you have to wise. Without becoming wise, how there can be wisdom? You have to become wise. You have to become. You have to transform. Not by accumulating worldly practical knowledge or information, one cannot become wise. To become wise, we need light. We need real knowledge. So when I will be possessing real knowledge, then only I will be called wise. So this real knowledge is called wisdom. So this is the interrelationship between information, knowledge, and wisdom, as explained by Kirit Joshi, late Professor Kirit Joshi. The real knowledge is also what is called wisdom. Although the connotation of wisdom includes the higher fruits, not only of learning to know, but also learning to venture, learning to harmonize, and learning to do. I will not explain these four things right now. I will be explaining these four things: learning to know, learning to venture, learning to harmonize, learning to do. Here, Kirit Joshi says that wisdom also includes not only of fruits, not only of learning to know, but also learning to venture, learning to harmonize, and learning to do. But these facts will be discussed at an appropriate stage of our lecture series. Actually, these facts, Kirit Joshi discussed in the context of a document. Rather, the last document published by UNESCO on education. According to UNESCO, the document was published in the year 1996, and the committee was formed under the chairman of Jacques Delors. That UNESCO document on education says that there are four pillars of education. What are those? Learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, and learning to be. And the very title of the UNESCO document, which was declared in 1996 only, you will be surprised, you will be shocked. UNESCO has now recognized that learning, the treasure within. Treasure is not in the textbook. Treasure is not in encyclopedia. Treasure is not in the classroom. UNESCO recognizes, which India has been uttering since last 10,000 years, that knowledge is not outside, knowledge is within, knowledge is within, knowledge is within. Knowledge is not to be acquired, knowledge is to be evoked from within. Education is not an outside-inside process. Education is an inside-outside process. So these facts will be discussed when I will be discussing Indian ideal of pedagogy or India's idea of education. But right now here, Kirit Joshi says, wisdom includes higher fruits, not only of the learning to know, but the wisdom also includes the fruits of learning to venture, learning to harmonize, and learning to do. That much we'll do here. Now, so next fact about intellectual knowledge. India says, even the intellectual knowledge can be measured into real knowledge. That is to say, wisdom. Not only intellectual knowledge can be aids to our real knowledge, but intellectual knowledge can be transformed into real knowledge, can be measured into real knowledge. India has the pedagogy, but we are alienated from those pedagogy. And that is the significance of bringing the concept of Indian knowledge system. We have been systematically alienated from those pedagogy. India has the pedagogy. So again in India, Kirit Joshi writes, we have pedagogy by means of which learning to know can gradually be transformed into learning to develop intellectual knowledge and so as to measure into wisdom. So first stage is learning to know. Then learning to know will be transformed into intellectual knowledge. Then intellectual knowledge will be measured into wisdom. That is to say, real knowledge. India has the pedagogy. Whether Western knowledge system knows anything about this process, these gradual processes, I am not aware. But India knows the pedagogy. India has the pedagogy. How learning to know can be transformed into or can be developed into intellectual knowledge, then intellectual knowledge can be measured into wisdom, that is to say, real knowledge. Why we are discussing this thing? What is the significance of Indian knowledge system or the profounder sense of knowledge in Indian sense? Why we are discussing Indian knowledge system? What is its significance and importance? Kirit Joshi says in a different context that this pedagogy needs to be brought into the forefront. He writes this thing in the National Agenda for Education. This pedagogy, which pedagogy? The pedagogy which can develop learning to know into intellectual knowledge and then intellectual knowledge to measure into wisdom. That pedagogy, which we have already forgotten. Rather, we have been made to forget. That pedagogy needs to be brought into the forefront. I think this is the challenge before national education policy. Genuine national education policy. We have to bring this pedagogy into the forefront. I am not concerned about the cosmetic sense of or the institutional sense of our education system. We have to bring this pedagogy into forefront and apply it in our dealings with students, with subject of students, subject of studies, and with the methods of teaching and learning. This is national agenda. This is our challenge. It is only when this task is undertaken that we shall be entitled to claim that we have begun to impart to our system of education what can be called its true national character. Without this, without accomplishment of this thing, if we cannot accomplish this thing, that is to say, if we cannot bring into forefront this pedagogy which can develop learning to know into intellectual knowledge and then intellectual knowledge into real knowledge, that is to say, into wisdom. We cannot say that we now practice an education system which is marked by national character. So this is one part about knowledge. Now let me discuss the word knowledge in the profounder Indian sense of the Jnana. These things now will be explained I have already laid the foundation. So now Maharishi discusses the word knowledge in the profounder Indian sense of the word Jnana in his Foundations of Indian Culture. Let me discuss that fact. So Maharishi starts that the Upanishads are Vedanta, we all know. A book of knowledge, we all know, but in a higher degree, not in ordinary sense. The Upanishads are Vedanta, a book of knowledge in a higher degrees. Higher? Higher than what? Maharishi says, even than the Vedas. You may accept it, you may reject it. But Maharishi claims the Upanishads are Vedanta, a book of knowledge in a higher degrees, even than the Vedas. Even than the Vedas. This is the profundity of our Upanishads. That is to say, Vedanta. Actually, Vedanta is part of the Veda. But what type of knowledge? But knowledge in the profounder Indian sense of the word Jnana. Upanishad সমূহক বেদান্ত বুলি কোৱা হয়, অৰ্থাৎ বেদতকৈও অধিক পৰিমাণে জ্ঞানৰ গ্ৰন্থ ৰূপে অভিহিত কৰা হয়। কিন্তু জ্ঞান শব্দ ইয়াত গভীৰতৰ ভাৰতীয় অৰ্থত গ্ৰহণ কৰিব লাগিব। গভীৰতৰ ভাৰতীয় অৰ্থত, not in Western sense. Even than the Vedas, but knowledge in the profounder Indian sense of the word Jnana. And what is that profounder sense? So, then Maharishi says, not a mere thinking and considering by the intelligence. Not mere thinking. So, mere thinking and considering by the intelligence is also knowledge. That means, that implies, that is intellectual knowledge. But knowledge in the profounder Indian sense of the word Jnana, Maharishi, first thing to be noted, not a mere thinking and considering by the intelligence. It is not the profounder sense of the knowledge in Indian word Jnana. Second, what is this? What is the significance of thinking and considering by intelligence? The pursuit and grasping of a mental form of truth by the intellectual mind. This is what is called thinking and considering by the intelligence. So this is not knowledge in the profounder Indian sense of the word Jnana. But this is definitely knowledge. Indirect knowledge, separative knowledge, knowledge by senses, knowledge by reasoning, and knowledge by intellectual thought. Wholly separative knowledge by indirect contact. Indirect contact with the object of knowledge. So not a mere thinking and considering by the intelligence, the pursuit and grasping of a mental form of truth by the intellectual mind. So the word Jnana has nothing to do with our intellectual mind. But then what? But by a seeing, not grasping, not considering, not thinking by intelligence, not pursuing, grasping, thinking, considering by intelligence and intellectual mind, but by seeing. So Jnana means you have to see, darshan. You have to, apuni darshan koribo paribo lagibo. Then only it will be Jnana in Indian sense. So, but by a seeing of it with what? Not by eye. Not by eye, but by your soul. But by your soul. That is what is called knowledge by identity. But a seeing of it with the soul. But seeing is also insufficient. Because knowledge is a luminous growth into higher states of being. So you have to live with that truth. The truth seen by you. You have to live in that truth seen by your soul. So second condition is and total living in it, not even a partial living. Total living in it with the power of what? Not with the power of your mind, vital and body, but with the power of your inner being. But with the power of your inner being. And if that happens, it is called a spiritual seizing. This is nothing but a spiritual seizing by a kind of identification. Actually, this is the knowledge by identity. Seeing by the soul and living in it by the power of the inner being. This is what is called a spiritual seizing by a kind of identification. By a kind of identification means by a kind of unification or unity with what? With the object of knowledge. You and the object of knowledge has to be unified. Tadatma. So by a kind of identification with the object of knowledge is jnana. Is jnana. Let me translate this thing into Assamese. ভারতীয় অর্থত জ্ঞান শব্দৰে মাথো চিন্তা কৰা বা মানৱ মনৰ দ্বাৰা আলোচনা তথা বিচাৰ বিবেচনা কৰা মনোময় বুদ্ধিৰ দ্বাৰা সত্যৰ এক মনোময় ৰূপ অনুসৰণ তথা খামুচ মাৰি ধৰাটোকে নুবুজায় তেনেহলে জ্ঞান মানে কি বৰং তাৰ সৈতে প্ৰয়োজন এইবোৰো লাগিব তাৰ সৈতে প্ৰয়োজন আত্মাৰ দ্বাৰা সত্যৰ দৰ্শন আকৌ সত্যৰ দৰ্শন হলেও নহব আৰু আন্তৰসত্তাৰ সমগ্ৰ শক্তিৰ সৈতে with the power of inner being আন্তৰসত্তাৰ সমগ্ৰ শক্তিৰ সৈতে সত্যৰ মাজত সমগ্ৰভাৱে বাস কৰা আপুনি বাস কৰিব লাগিব তাৰ মাজত জ্ঞেয় বস্তু মানে অবজেক্ট অফ নলেজ যিটো বিষয়ে আপুনি জ্ঞান লাভ কৰিবলৈ অন্বেষী হৈছে জ্ঞেয় বস্তুক এক ধৰণৰ একত্ববোধৰ দ্বাৰা এই যে আইডেন্টিটি আমি তাদাত্ম্যবোধ বুলিও ক'ব পাৰো একত্ববোধ অৰ্থাৎ জ্ঞেয় বস্তু আৰু আপুনি দুটা মিলি যাব লাগিব জ্ঞেয় বস্তুক এক ধৰণৰ একত্ববোধৰ দ্বাৰা আধ্যাত্মিকভাৱে আয়ত্তাধীন কৰা এয়াই হ'ল ভাৰতীয় শব্দ জ্ঞান শব্দৰ অৰ্থ This is what is called actually wisdom, prajna. আৰু সেইভাবে আপোনালোকে হয়তো আমাৰ অন্তত এটা কথা আপোনালোকে ইনফৰমেশন হিচাপেও জানে কি জানে and because it is only by an integral knowing of the self অৰ্থাৎ আত্মাক পূৰ্ণৰূপে জানিলেহে আমি এই জ্ঞান লাভ কৰিব পাৰি তাৰ বাহিৰে কোনো বিকল্প নাই অৰ্থাৎ আমি যদি প্ৰাজ্ঞ হ'ব বিচাৰিছো আমাক যদি লাইট লাগে জ্যোতি লাগে পোহৰ লাগে আলোক লাগে যি আলোকে মোক মোৰ নিজৰ আসল সত্তাত বিকশিত কৰিব মই যদি উচ্চতৰ সত্তাত আৰোহণ কৰিব বিচাৰো তেনেহলে আন কোনো উপায় নাই that this kind of direct knowledge can be made complete by what? By an integral knowing of the self. আত্মাক পূৰ্ণৰূপে জানিব লাগিব আৰু এইভাবেই ভাৰতবৰ্ষত বাৰে বাৰে আত্মাক জনাৰ কথা কয় আত্মাক নাজানিলে we can grow only in the manifestation we cannot grow in the being. We cannot grow in our true being. We cannot rise to our higher states of being. There will be no promotion of our life. There will be no promotion. We will remain as assistant professor. We will never get associate professorship. And because it is only an integral knowing of the self that this kind of direct knowledge can be made complete, it was the self that the Vedantic sages, amak Vedantor Rishi hokale bare bare ki kotha janiboloi koy, atmak janiboloi koy. This is the reason behind. It was the self that the Vedantic sages sought to know, to live in, and to be one with it by identity. আৰু সেইভাবে বেদান্তৰ ঋষিসকলে আত্মাক জানিব বিচাৰিছিল, আত্মাৰ মাজত বাস কৰিব বিচাৰিছিল, আৰু আত্মাৰ সৈতে একত্ববোধৰ দ্বাৰা আত্মাৰ সৈতে সন্মিলিত হ'ব বিচাৰিছিল বাই আইডেন্টিটি। নহলে তেওঁলোকে উচ্চতৰ সত্তাত আৰোহণ কৰিব নোৱাৰে। Because psychological knowledge, scientific knowledge, practical knowledge, worldly knowledge, philosophical knowledge can help me undoubtedly, but can help me only in the being, only in the manifestation, only in the world. আৰু যিহেতু মাথো আত্মাক পূৰ্ণৰূপে জানিলেহে এনে ধৰণৰ সাক্ষাৎ জ্ঞান পূৰ্ণ কৰি তুলিব পাৰি। বৈদান্তিক ঋষিসকলে সেয়েহে আত্মাক জানিব বিচাৰিছিল, তাৰ মাজত বাস কৰিব বিচাৰিছিল, আৰু তাদাত্ম্যবোধৰ দ্বাৰা বাবে একত্ববোধ বুলিও ক'ব পাৰো, অৰ্থাৎ আইডেন্টিটি, ইউনিটি। তাদাত্ম্যবোধৰ দ্বাৰা তাৰ সৈতে মানে আত্মাৰ সৈতে একময় হ'ব বিচাৰিছিল, ওৱান হ'ব বিচাৰিছিল। আত্মা আৰু তেওঁৰ মাজত যাতে there is no separation. This is what is called cosmic consciousness also. এইবোৰ আমি যদি পিছত প্ৰসংগক্ৰমে আমি জানিলে কম। গতিকে মই আজি আপোনালোকক মূলত, কিন্তু আমি এই নলেজৰ বিষয়ে we will continue study, we will continue to discuss about knowledge in Indian context in next 2-3 sessions also. But today we have discussed what is information, what is knowledge, what is the difference between information and knowledge, and then what is knowledge in Indian traditions. In Indian tradition, we have also discussed knowledge as a state that lies beyond the intellectual activity of the mind, knowledge as a luminous growth into the higher state of our being, then knowledge as a light that can help me to grow in my true being. Then we have also discussed India admitting other kinds of knowledge. We have also discussed how these other kinds of knowledge can also help me to grow, but to grow not in the being, but in the becoming. Then we have also discussed how this knowledge can be made aids to real knowledge. We have also discussed that real knowledge is secret to mind. We have also discussed that mind gets only reflection. Real knowledge lives only in the spirit. Then we have discussed that India has the pedagogy by which learning to know can be transformed into learning to can be transformed or can be developed to intellectual knowledge. Learning to know can be developed into intellectual knowledge, and intellectual knowledge into wisdom or real knowledge. Then we have discussed a declaration by late Professor Girish Joshi that this pedagogy needs to be brought into the forefront and applied in our dealings with students, with subject of studies, with the methods of teaching and learning. India has the pedagogy. You are to explore. India has the pedagogy. And then only we can call our education to have its true national character. Then we have discussed knowledge in the profounder Indian sense of the word Jnana in the words of Maharishi Sri Aurobindo. With this, let me allow to conclude here. If you want to discuss pertaining to the discussions that took place right now, I will be delighted to interact with you. So now the platform is open for interaction. With these words, I conclude this sixth session. Thank you and namaskar to all. Anything, if you want to discuss anything, I will share the knowledge in the profounder sense of the Indian word Jnana, given by, as explained by Maharishi, will be shared with you in the group. Anything, if you want to discuss, we have 8-9 minutes. In the next session, or at an appropriate stage, I will be taking up these fourfold orders of knowledge. It is very important if you really interested to know about Indian knowledge system, because Indian knowledge system is radically and fundamentally different from Western knowledge system. It is radically different from
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
এই নলেজৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত বিদ্যাৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত এই অপৰাবিদ্যা পৰাবিদ্যা এইটো ইয়াত কেনেকৈ অপৰাবিদ্যা পৰাবিদ্যা another category বিশেষকৈ অপৰাবিদ্যা পৰাবিদ্যা উপনিষদে কৈছে আমি সেই বিষয়েও যথাসময়ত কৰিম ঠিক আছে
অপৰাবিদ্যা মানে মই কম আৰু ইয়াতে এইটোতেই 2-3টা সেশনৰ ভিতৰত একচুয়ালি যদি কব অপৰাবিদ্যা means vidya of the world. Worldly knowledge is called Aparavidya. But the exact sense of the Sanskrit word apara is lower. But lower is not inferior knowledge. Knowledge of world is called Aparavidya.
Yeah.
But knowledge of the self, knowledge of the Atma is called Paravidya. Or knowledge of the Brahman or Brahmavidya is called Paravidya. You can also define it as knowledge of matter is called Aparavidya. Knowledge of consciousness is called Paravidya. You can define in various ways. It will be taken at an appropriate stage.
Thank you.
Sir, Prasanjit Koisilo.
Hi.
Namaste. Can I
Yes.
ask you? Can I ask you?
Yes.
That is, at the very outset, I congratulate you for very simple but very deep discussion of it. Especially it emphasizes me to be highlighted on consciousness, which require us to go deeper to the higher knowledge, that is super consciousness.
Yes.
I like to know, sir, divine consciousness related to super consciousness, how we can attain that unlimited, that is at the lower level of unlimited super consciousness, that is lower level, because if I not be wrong, according to my small knowledge, that is it requires heavy practice, devotion, and the maximum toil with Lord. It may be Guru, it may be our leader. But here in the common platform, I request you to contextualize with consciousness, because maximum time you try to focus it in, don't take it otherwise, focus it in outwards, sir. That is worldly. I like to get it inward, sir. That is super conscious, and that is wisdom. First is wisdom, and then from super consciousness. Sir, how? Yes, sir.
How? So you are basically asking me
how I can rise, or how my consciousness can rise to higher consciousness, even up to the super conscient. Yes? So you are basically asking me how I can rise to super conscient. Is not it? Okay? Mr. Chaudhary?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
In
sir.
India, there are thousands of ways. There are thousands of ways. There are Gyan Yoga, there is Karma Yoga, there is Bhakti Yoga, there are hundreds of yoga. But if you ask me in the context of yoga of knowledge, Jnana Yoga, you have to evoke real knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Real knowledge will lead you to your true being, because
Yes, sir.
real knowledge is a luminous growth, which will take you to your higher states of being. So if your swabhav is jnana, then you have to pursue Gyan Yoga. But if your swabhav is karma, then you have to pursue Karma Yoga. Even through
Okay.
devotion, you can rise to super conscience. There are thousands of ways. So
Oh.
you can choose any one of them.
So
Okay.
I like to know, sir, only the way just to attain the super
Yes, that is-
consciousness.
I am telling you, as Ramakrishna says, Jata Mot
Yeah.
Tata Pot.
Yeah,
There are
yes, sir.
thousands of ways. Even
Yeah, yeah.
through Karma Yoga. If you ask me in the context of the Gita, Gita says, if you can renounce your ego and if you can renounce your desire, then only you can rise to super conscience. According to Gita, this is prescription. According to Upanishads, you have to know the spirit. You have to know the spirit. And to know this spirit, there are thousands of ways. And all those ways cannot be discussed in this year-long lecture series, but I will definitely take up certain ways at an appropriate stage of our discussion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There are so many ways. There are Tantra Yoga, there are Jnana Yoga, there are Bhakti Yoga, there are Karma Yoga.
Sir, all the as you are telling, maximum of these actually apparently showing it to be higher, apparently outwardly, but
Yes.
actually that is if I go to the deeper of a pond or anything and sit,
Okay. Then now, though I do not want to prescribe,
yeah,
but if you are asking me, I am
Yeah.
giving you another formula. If you are
Okay.
really interested to rise to super conscience,
yeah.
first formula, you have to have the aspiration.
Okay.
You have to have the aspiration.
Yeah.
But what kind of aspiration? Intense aspiration, not
Okay.
occasional aspiration.
Okay.
Honest aspiration and
Okay.
sincere aspiration. But even
Okay.
aspiration is not also sufficient. Aspiration has to be followed by rejection.
Okay.
Rejection of what? Rejection of your lower nature. The
Okay.
nature which you have inherited from your animal birth,
Yeah.
from your animal history.
That is sanskara. One
Animal.
sort of
I am right now telling you lower nature. Lower
yeah.
nature.
Yeah.
So rejection, even aspiration and rejections are not sufficient.
Okay.
Aspiration and rejection has to be followed invariably by surrender. Surrender
Okay.
to what? Surrender to the supreme creatrix of the world, that is to say, Divine Mother. This
Yes, sir.
prescription-
Yes, sir.
This is the prescription of the divine of Sri Aurobindo.
Yeah.
If these three things you can pursue on these three lines, other responsibilities will be discharged by Sri Krishna living in you.
Thank you, sir.
Other
Thank you.
portion of your effort will be taken care of by the divine himself.
Yeah.
But you are to perform only these three things: aspiration, surrender, and rejection. But
Rejection.
according to Gita, Gita
Yeah.
says you can rise, you can get me, you can rise to super conscience through the way of jnana. If you are not interested in the jnana, you can rise through the path of dhyana. But then Sri Krishna says the easiest way to rise into the super conscience, if you can renounce your ego and the desire. Ego and the desire. According to Gyan Yoga, if you can evoke real knowledge, that is to say, if you become wise and wisdom, then
Yeah.
luminous growth, that light will take you to super conscience. So there are thousands of ways. I cannot prescribe any particular way on you because it is your choice of your own svabhava and own sadharma. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Because I don't like to discuss and like to listen more because it will
Yes.
confuse me, sir.
Yes,
That is
yes.
the concise thing that you give. I appreciate
Yes,
your
thank you.
very concise thing. Many thanks. Appreciate, sir. And
Thank you.
I invite you just to continue like this. And
Thank you.
so for the next, for the next, I mean, the next month.
Next,
sorry.
it will be notified. It will be notified in the group. Usually, it takes place every Saturday and Sunday. But
Okay.
if there is any sense, it will be notified in the group itself.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
স্যার প্রসেনজিৎ চক্রবর্তী
হয়
কৈছিল
কওক।
স্যার এটা একটা সিম্পল প্ৰশ্ন আছিলে
হয়
স্যাৰ মাইণ্ডে স্যাৰ কি বেকগ্ৰাউণ্ড কনচিয়াছনেছৰ আত্মাক জানিব নিবিচাৰে নেকি
মাইণ্ডে এফৰ্ট দিব লাগিব কিন্তু অকল মাইণ্ডৰ দ্বাৰা নহব আপুনি মাইণ্ডৰ দ্বাৰা প্ৰথমতে আপোনাৰ অন্তৰাত্মাক ৰিয়েলাইজ কৰিব পাৰিবই লাগিব মাইণ্ডৰ এফৰ্ট লাগিব বিকজ মাইণ্ড ইজ এন ইনষ্ট্ৰুমেণ্ট
ৰাইট
বাট you have to be enlightened by your antaratma.
স্যার ইন দ্যাট কেস স্যার এই যে ইনটিউশন আহে ইনষ্টিংক্ট আহে
হয়
মাইণ্ডে কি প্ৰশ্ন কৰে নেকি আত্মাক যে এনেকুৱা লাগে বা আত্মা কি নিজে দিয়ে নেকি
মই বুজি পোৱা নাই আপোনাৰ প্ৰশ্নটো বুজি পোৱা
তাৰমানে এই যে ইনটিউশনবোৰ যে আহে মানুহৰ
intuition is a faculty that is to be inculcated. আপুনি intuition অন্তৰ্দৃষ্টি আপুনি সিস্টেমেটিক্যালি ডেভেলপ কৰিব লাগিব
নাই যে সাপোজ একদম চিন্তা কৰা নাই যে right now no ordinary people possesses intuitive capacity. আচ্ছা
বৰং যিটো জন্তুৰ মাজত যিটো পাৱাৰ আছে তেওঁলোকক ইনষ্টিংক্ট বুলি কয়
হয়
মানুহৰ মাজত বৰ্তমান এইটো প্ৰচন্ন হৈ আছে আমি তাক ডেভেলপ কৰিব লাগিব আৰু ডেভেলপ কৰাৰ কাৰণে ইণ্ডিয়াত পেডাগজি আছে if you are sincere in your aspiration, if you are honest in your aspiration, if you have surrendered your whole being to the Divine Mother, then the Divine Mother will take you to the appropriate discipline.
Okay, sir. Clear. হ'ব sir.
হয়
Sir, মই ভাস্কৰজ্যোতি শৰ্মাই কৈছো
All these are very important, sir. All these very important.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Sharma.
Sir, ভাস্কৰজ্যোতি শৰ্মাই কৈছো এই আপোনাৰ এই আৰম্ভণিতে যেটো কৈছিলে আৰম্ভণি মানে মই 5 মিনিট মান মই নাপালো কিন্তু তাত যেটো কৈছে four fold orders of the knowledge of Indian knowledge system তাৰ যেটো ফাৰ্স্ট সিস্টেমৰ কথা আছিল আইডেন্টিটি
আৰু knowledge আকৌ এবাৰ কৈ দিও First one is called knowledge by identity.
Knowledge by identity.
Knowledge by identity.
হয়
2 নম্বৰ এই ক্লাসিফিকেশনটো মহাৰিষিয়ে দিয়া ক্লাসিফিকেশন লাইফ ডিভাইনৰ 543 পেজ ভলিউম নম্বৰ 21 নেক্সট টু কৈছে knowledge by intimate direct contact
হয়
contact with what? Contact with the object of knowledge.
হয় sir.
Third to কৈছে separative knowledge by separative direct contact. Knowledge by separative direct contact. And fourth to কৈছে wholly separative by indirect contact.
হয় sir. এতিয়া এই কেইটাৰ ওপৰত মই আৰু এটা পইণ্ট মানে মনলৈ কৈ থাকোতে আহিছে, তাৰ পিছতে এটা কথা ইয়াত উল্লেখ কৰা হৈছে যে লাৰ্নিং দ্যাট ট্ৰেজাৰ অফ ওৱান সেল্ফ।
নহয় সেইটো কৈছো কি সেইটো মই আলোচনা কৰিম। ইউনেস্কোৱে 1996 চনত বৰং সেইখনেই শেহতীয়া শিক্ষা বিষয়ক প্ৰতিবেদন, সেই প্ৰতিবেদনখনত ইউনেস্কোৱে শিক্ষাৰ 4টা স্তম্ভ ঘোষণা কৰিছে। According to UNESCO, there are 4 pillars of education. First one is learning to know, then learning to do, then learning to live together, then learning to be. এই 4টা কি বস্তু? লার্নিং টু নো মানে আপুনি যি ধৰণে ভাবিছে অকল মাত্ৰ ফিজিক্স জানিলো, কেমিষ্ট্ৰি জানিলো, সিমানতে সীমাবদ্ধ নহয়। ইট ইজ দি মোস্ট সারফেস সিগনিফিকেন্স। তাৰ ডিপাৰ মিনিং আছে, তাৰ একেবাৰে প্ৰফাউণ্ডেষ্ট মিনিং আছে। তেনেকে লার্নিং টু ডু, তাৰ যিটো যে মই চাকৰি কৰিব লাগিব, কাম কৰিব লাগিব, সেইটো একেবাৰে তাৰ অৰ্ডিনাৰী মিনিং। তাৰ ডিপাৰ মিনিং আছে, ডিপেষ্ট মিনিং আছে। অল দিস থিংস উইল বি টেকেন আপ এট এন এপ্ৰোপ্ৰিয়েট ষ্টেজ। আৰু ইউনেস্কোৱে এই প্ৰতিবেদনখনৰ যিটো শিৰোনাম আছিল, যিটো টাইটেল আছিল, সেই শিৰোনামটো দিছিল কি বুলি? দিছিলে লাৰ্নিং দি ট্ৰেজাৰ উইদিন।
হয় স্যার,
এই তিনটা ৰত্নভাণ্ডাৰ ভিতৰত।
হয় স্যার, এই 3টা পইণ্টৰ ওপৰত মোৰ পটককে মনলৈ আহিছে কথা এটা, প্ৰশ্ন এটা, যে আইডেন্টিটি মানে নলেজ অফ দা আইডেন্টিটি, এইটো যিটো আছিলে ফাৰ্স্ট পইণ্ট,
নলেজ বাই
আইডেন্টিটি। এতিয়া তাতে আমি সেলফক আমি সাবজেক্ট হিচাপে লৈছো আৰু বাকিখিনিক অবজেক্ট হিচাপে লৈছো।
আপুনি সাবজেক্ট,
হয়, মই নিজে সাবজেক্ট।
আপুনি সাবজেক্ট আৰু যি বিষয়টো জানিব খোজে সেইটো অবজেক্ট। এটা বিষয়ী, আপুনি হল বিষয়ী আৰু ইটো হল বিষয়।
হয় স্যার, এটা যদি মই নিজকে নিজে অবজার্ভ কৰো, মই নিজকে অবজেক্ট হিচাপে ধৰিব পাৰিম নেকি?
তেতিয়াহলে যদি আপোনাৰ কাৰণে ষ্টাডিৰ বিষয়টো আপোনাৰ অন্তৰাত্মা,
হয় স্যার,
আপোনাৰ সেলফ, তেনেহলে সেলফ উইল বি অবজেক্ট অফ নলেজ।
হয় স্যার,
আৰু আপোনাৰ যিটো কনসিয়াসনেস, আপোনাৰ যিটো কনসিয়াসনেসেৰে আপুনি অবজার্ভ কৰিছে, অবজার্ভাৰ ইজ কল্ড সাবজেক্ট।
হয় স্যার, হয়। এইটোৱে মোৰ মনলৈ প্ৰশ্ন আহিছিলে যে মই নিজকে সাবজেক্ট
নিজে কৰিলে আপুনি আপোনাৰ যিটো কনসিয়াসনেসেৰে অবজার্ভ কৰিছে সেইটো সাবজেক্ট অফ নলেজ, আৰু যাক আপুনি অবজার্ভ কৰিছে সেইটো অবজেক্ট অফ নলেজ।
থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার, থ্যাংক ইউ।
আৰু কোনোবাই কিবা জানিব? Organizer, we may perhaps conclude now. Organizer, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Are you here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you may conclude now.
Thank you, sir. If anyone has any more queries, kindly send it to the WhatsApp group.
Yes.
As we conclude today's session, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to Professor Diganta Bishwa Sharma, sir, for his enlightening discourse. We are grateful for the knowledge he has imparted today, and we look forward to the many more sessions we have ahead in this lecture series. Thank you, sir. And thank you to all the participants for your active engagement. We hope to see you all in the upcoming sessions too. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you and namaskar and good night to all.
নমস্কাৰ, সকলোকে নমস্কাৰ জনাইছো।
নমস্কাৰ।